Good evening, everyone. Welcome to the Miriam's Kitchen Mayoral Forum. We're so excited that all of you are here. My name is Jesse Rabinowitz, and I work at Miriam's Kitchen. For those of you who are new to the Miriam's family, Miriam's Kitchen has been working for over 35 years in the Foggy Bottom area to end long-term homelessness. We are most well known for our homemade and delicious healthy meals, but we also provide outreach services to over 33 square miles of the city, provide permanent supportive housing to over 250 people in the district, and do advocacy to ensure that the mayor and the DC Council end chronic homelessness. We are so grateful that y'all are here with us tonight. As I mentioned, this is our first ever mayoral forum, so we're really happy to have all of you with us. We encourage folks to make use of the chat function. So if you're able, please put your name and your ward in the chat and let us know what your #1 priority is in the mayoral election. Miriam's Kitchen is a nonprofit organization, so we're not able to endorse candidates, but we do believe that having a robust and public conversation with decision makers and potential decision makers is a vital part of public discourse and a vital part of ending chronic homelessness in DC. As such, we have invited all of the declared mayoral candidates as of February 18th to join us, and we're so grateful that Andre Davis, Robert White, and James Butler accepted our invitation. A few more housekeeping things before I turn it over to our wonderful facilitator and host, Dana White. A guiding principle of our advocacy at Miriam's Kitchen is to ensure that people with lived experience of homelessness are true partners in all of our work and are able to speak directly to those in power. Tonight, we'll intersperse tonight's discussion with videos from 3 amazing Miriam's Kitchen leaders who have experienced homelessness to hear what they want DC's next mayor to do about homelessness. A few items on housekeeping. This event is being recorded and streamed to our Facebook page. We encourage you to chime in the chat and also on social media using the hashtag Decision2022. Sorry, it's been a long few years. Decision2022. And we encourage you to ask questions in the chat, in the Q&A, and if we have time at the end, we will do our best to get to them. We ask folks to be decent and respectful of everyone, or we will exit you from the Zoom if we need to. And this is just a reminder to everyone that this is not a debate, but rather a forum so we can hear from people, from candidates about what their ideas are. The goal isn't to get into a back and forth, but rather just have a conversation about how the different candidates view homelessness and chronic homelessness in DC. The candidates have been asked to stick to a time limit, which we will be holding them accountable to. And with that, I'm going to turn it over to our wonderful facilitator, Dana White. Dana is brilliant and a nationally renowned speaker and advocate and DC resident with expertise in racial justice, ending homelessness, and is just a brilliant collaborator. And we're really grateful to have Dana with us tonight. So I'm going to shut up and turn it over to Dana.
Thanks so much, Jesse, for the warm welcome and introduction. And I also want to take a moment here to thank all of the folks at Miriam's Kitchen for organizing tonight's forum, of course, and for also extending the opportunity for me to moderate the discussion with the candidates. As a resident of Ward 5 myself, as a person with lived experience of homelessness, and as a housing justice professional. So let's get started. And we will begin by introducing our candidates, beginning with James Butler, a nearly 20-year resident of the district who came in second in the Democratic primary in 2018. Mr. Butler loves the nation's capital and is a champion for its residents. James is a former civil rights lawyer and a former ANC commissioner in Ward 5. We also have Andre Davis, a former public school educator who aims to improve the accountability, communication, and trust between the district government and its residents. He also seeks to increase civic engagement while advocating for all residents in all 8 wards based upon his 7-pillar platform. And last, we have Robert White, a 5th-generation Washingtonian, husband, father, and at-large member of the DC Council. Since joining the DC Council in 2016, Robert has passed legislation to expand early childhood education, restore voting rights to incarcerated residents whose right to vote was taken away by Jim Crow policies, and increase funding to support folks experiencing homelessness and prevent evictions. We will now have opening remarks from each candidate. I'd like to remind you all that you have 3 minutes, and we'll begin with Council Member Robert White.
Thank you so much, Dana. I want to first start by thanking Miriam's Kitchen and our friend from the People for Fairness Coalition, Robert Warren, Reginald Black. I want to thank you all for the work that you do. I'm Robert White, as the introduction said. I'm an at-large council member. More importantly, I'm a husband, a father, and a fifth-generation Washingtonian. So I want to give you a little bit of background on me that will help you better understand the policy positions I take as a council member and why I had the vision for the city that I have as mayor. So I grew up in DC in a family very typical of DC in the 80s and 90s. I grew up in a family that struggled and frankly still struggle to this day. My life took a very difficult and unfortunate turn when I was 8 and lost my mom to breast cancer. And just a few weeks later, almost lost my life in a near fatal car accident. It pushed me way behind in school. I failed the third grade in every grade, failed every grade from third to 10th grade. And what I needed when I was falling behind were people who believed in me. Instead, what I had was mostly people who pegged me as a troublemaker, who said I wouldn't succeed, and a guidance counselor who told me I wouldn't go to college. But I did find some folks in my community, some folks from my church, from my family, and a few educators who did believe in me. And they said, Robert, you're better than what people say of you. And eventually I believed it. I got my momentum. I did go to college. I graduated from law school and began a career of public service. I worked in the Maryland courts. Then I worked as legislative counsel to Congresswoman Eleanor Holmes Norton. But as I was watching our city grow and thrive in a way that I never thought possible in the 80s and 90s, I would look around at my family and people like my family and realize they were doing no better now than they were in the 80s and 90s. And I realized how many people we had left behind despite having magnificent resources. And I believe that I could be a valuable voice for our city on the DC Council, speaking up for the real lived experiences of the everyday people being left behind. Since I graduated from law school, I've had the opportunity, unfortunately, to have members of my family incarcerated and come live with me. And I've seen the process of returning back from incarceration firsthand through my big brother. Since being elected to the council, I've had immediate family members deal with homelessness, which is why when we wanted to streamline homelessness and determine residency, I spoke up and I said, no, there are Washingtonians who were pushed out months ago and years ago because they had nowhere to live and they've been sleeping on a couch in Maryland, but they are still DC residents. And so I challenged us to look differently at how we qualify people for homeless services here in the district. I have consistently been a voice for marginalized people, for people being left behind, for the incarcerated, for LGBTQ residents, youth and seniors, for school children, making sure that we don't settle. Now is our opportunity as a city to be ambitious and to be bold. We have a mayor right now that has had record-setting budgets every single year of her term, but we have not solved any problems because we don't have a clear vision for our city. I'm running to be a mayor with an ambitious and clear vision for our city and to bring the transformation that we need. So thank you again for having me.
Thank you, Councilmember White. Next, we will have James Butler.
Thank you, Dana. I'm appreciative to be here, and I want to thank everyone that's joining via Zoom and any other platform. Thank you all so much for giving us just a little bit of your time. We know that is one of the most valuable commodities. Jesse, it's good to see you again, you continuing to endeavor in the great work that you do at Miriam's Kitchen. Thank you for the tour a few years back. I can't say thank you enough, and actually getting to see some of the wonderful meals that you all have prepared for the homeless there. As was mentioned, I'm James Butler. I am a Ward 5 resident, a former ANC commissioner, and a former civil rights lawyer. Folks, I have fought for justice and the rights of the underserved and the marginalized my entire adult life. I have sued governments on behalf of people that have been discriminated based on age, race, religion, color. I no longer actively practice, but I am actively an advocate before the Office of Human Rights, where I still fight for people's rights, and then the Office of the EEOC, where I fight for people that have been discriminated based on discrimination within the workplace. I currently serve as the chairperson of the Natural ID Foundation for the Homeless, which is based out in Koreatown. And we handle a lot of the homeless issues that you see go on in Skid Row. And I will say this, I've never seen homelessness like that in my entire life. It's almost a spiritual experience that you can experience the despair, the hopelessness. The homelessness here in our own city is no different. My first priority as mayor of this wonderful city will be to end chronic homelessness, not just to talk about it, but we have a plan to end chronic homelessness. Many of you may know, if you've looked at my website, it's a detailed plans. I've authored articles on ending homelessness. Now, in addition to pontificating on it, talking to my board about it, I want a plan to roll out in this city that the nation's capital can be the beacon of every other major US city, that we can solve the homelessness problem and show the rest of the country how it's done. I'm James Butler, and I'm asking for your vote for mayor on June 21st.
Thank you. And now we will have opening remarks from Andre Davis.
Good evening, everyone. Thank you for having me. Thank you for inviting me. My name is Andre Davis. I am a former District of Columbia public school educator with a decade of experience here. I am a lifelong Ward 6 resident, born and raised on Capitol Hill. And my connection to the cause is in general because I grew up on Capitol Hill, and as we know, Capitol Hill has changed drastically throughout the years. Throughout my 30 years here on this earth, it's changed drastically in regards to, the housing market and increasing rates and people not being able to afford it. And I've had family members who have suffered or fallen victim to displacement at the hands of various policies that have been initiated or enacted here in the city. Oftentimes, it hits me personally because I have a younger brother who is paranoid schizophrenic, who without my due diligence and day-to-day instruction would probably be very similar to some of the young men and women that we see wandering around the city, asking for help, looking for help, but are, discarded or feel discarded. There have been many a times where I've had to go find him, where I've had to go, canvas areas. And that leads me to believe that we do not have a solid plan for our underhoused and unhoused residents. As an educator, I sat with students who would dread going home or leaving the school and would fight nail and tooth to stay in the classroom because they did not want to return to the housing conditions that they were being faced with. I grew up right up the street from the DC General Hospital, which was converted into a homeless shelter, which until this day, those deplorable conditions still affect and have affected many residents' families here in the district. We still have children missing, such as Relisha Rudd. We still have unanswered, questions, and we have yet to see a formidable program in regards to our unhoused and underhoused residents. Instead, we see encampments being, enclosed upon and pushed away. And it leads me to believe that if we had such a solid plan already in place, why would a person choose to be, outside of the comfort of, seeking some type of housing or shelter for the evening? And that leads me to believe that we don't have those particular programs in place, or that those programs are not necessarily voiced to our residents, and that one size fits all mantra is not the actual mantra that we need to go by moving forward. We need to assess our population so that we can see exactly why people are ending up back and forth being unhoused, underhoused, or suffering from chronic homelessness. Thank you so much.
Thank you. A personal thank you and welcome to each of the candidates. As mentioned earlier, we're also going to be hearing from 3 advocates tonight from Miriam's Kitchen with lived experience of homelessness. In our first video tonight, we'll hear from Tony Burns, a former Miriam's Kitchen advocacy fellow and persistent advocate for the LGBTQ and cancer communities. Tony was recently featured in a USA Today article about the tragic attacks and murders of our unhoused neighbors.
I'm Tony Burns. I'm a former advocacy fellow for Miriam's Kitchen. I am also a part of the Speakers Bureau. What I am hoping that the candidates running for mayor of DC will really focus more on as it relates to homelessness is getting folk off the street. In the recent turn of events, you have homeless citizens who are in tents on the street being shot and stabbed, victims of crimes just because they're homeless. They are easier target. So I'm asking the mayor and all candidates who are running for mayor to really up your game for getting homeless people off the street.
And that was Tony Burns. Thank you to Mr. Tony Burns. We will begin our moderated Q&A portion of tonight's forum. And for question 1, the order of response will be Andre Davis, James Butler, and then Councilmember Robert White. Our first question for the evening is, why is ending homelessness important to you? Andre Davis.
Ending homelessness is important to me because I see, as an educator in the classroom, I saw so many children, and I've taught in pretty much every ward or have interacted with students from every ward in the city, most recently being in Ward 4. And we had a larger population of students who were unhoused or underhoused. And ending homelessness is important for me because I truly believe that that type of trauma affects the productivity of a person moving forward. And by eliminating homelessness, we can eliminate one more barrier that is systemically placed here in the district, stopping people from thriving, stopping people from, purchasing homes, from, finding gainful employment, finding, their partners and love, and all of these things that, everyone has a right to. Ending homelessness is super important because it's that barrier right there that I've seen just being an educator in the classroom that has stopped a positive trajectory for a student. And I know that if that affects a student at such a young age, I know just having relatives, relatives who are returning citizens and substance abuse, and seeing them go through their own battles with homelessness, I know that it can affect an adult in tremendous ways as well. So ending homelessness is a part of me in regards to, it helps with productivity in the city. It helps with reducing crime. It helps with, making sure that we have everyone working on the same accord. So that's why ending homelessness is a priority for me.
Thank you. And next we'll hear from James Butler.
Thank you, Dana. Since the age of 3, I grew up in a household with both my mom and dad as Protestant ministers. I remember from the time I was 3 years old, my parents in the late 70s and the early 80s would house people who were experiencing homelessness in our own home. So I grew up around them my entire life. I remember being literally, before I went to grade school to high school, all through high school, we would have someone's in our home at some point that my parents were feeding, that clothing, giving money to, supporting in some kind of way. This value that my father would speak about and exhort about as a minister of helping the least of these amongst us has been a huge part of my life and will always be. So I will say, from a foundational standpoint, it cannot not be important to me. And I've said this early on in my run for mayor. I will be a mayor for everyone, but a champion for the underserved. As mayor of this great city, it is obligatory for me to understand and appreciate the fact that housing is a basic human right. And I will not ignore that like it's been ignored. Now, some people will talk about this thing and say, oh, we're giving people temporary housing, we're giving shelters. My goal is to end the cycle of purgatory we call shelters and transitional housing, and to ensure that we provide permanent, stable, supportive housing for every district resident experiencing homelessness.
Thank you. And now Councilmember White.
Thank you, Tony, for your remarks, and Dana, thank you for the question. While I only had 8 years with my mom, she instilled something permanent in me. She made sure that I always knew that I was no better or worse than anybody else, and that I saw the dignity and humanity in every single person. I have focused my work, my life on social justice. When I've been to our homeless encampments and talked to people about why they were there and what they were experiencing, I realized something that wasn't entirely surprising, which is that there's not much difference between many of the people in our encampments and me, and frankly, in you. Depending on sort of the orientation of your faith, it is either just luck or blessings that we are here and they are there. And that's something we have to appreciate, particularly in leadership. And when we look at what problems we're going to solve, how we're going to solve them, and whether or not we're going to prioritize them. I've also been to visit DC General Shelter before it was closed down, because right after I got elected, there was report after report about terrible conditions. So I just showed up to visit. That made a lot of people angry, but that's what I needed to do to get a real sense of what was happening. What I saw were little girls the same age as my little girls living in conditions that I didn't want my girls to live in. And so my focus as a leader is to solve problems that are solvable, but also recognize that it is not a coincidence that 85% of unhoused people in this city are African American. What makes it worse, though, is that this statistic exists in a city where the majority of elected officials are African American and in the jurisdiction that is one of the wealthiest in the nation. So we have to be committed as a city to social justice. That is what I do as a leader. That is the mayor that I will be. As a council member, you have seen me at encampments with everyday people. As mayor, you will see the exact same thing. This matters. This is solvable, but it requires a leader that has not just money, but empathy, compassion, and a plan.
Thank you. And I failed to mention this earlier, but your responses to each of the questions should fall within 2 minutes, and you all have done really well with paying attention to that timer, so thank you. Our second question is, single adults experiencing homelessness are those most likely to die without housing and live in encampments or overcrowded shelters. Please outline your plan as mayor for ending homelessness for single adults. Specifically, please explain how your plan to end single adult homelessness will disrupt the oppressive systems such as racism and capitalism that cause homelessness. We'll begin with James Butler.
Thank you, Dana. First, I believe there are two pillars that we must establish to end cycles of chronic homelessness among singles or anyone. It is trust is one of the most important components of establishing that. And then our willingness to prioritize it. Trust and making it a priority. So those are the two basic pillars that I will focus on. Making sure that we can work with our faith-based communities and other entities related to establishing trust. It can be clubs or whatever. And making it a priority. The solution to end chronic homelessness is simple. And I may be oversimplifying it by saying this, but I'm sure not to an expert like yourself. Simply provide housing. This city has an extremely large budget. We also own our own stock of housing in this city. I believe there's not a single person in this city that does not deserve housing. And we have enough housing in the city's housing stock to provide that. What we don't have is the will, desire, and compassion to take that housing stock and put it over the heads of those that are experiencing homelessness. We will do that, as opposed to selling these buildings to private developers for $1 and other amounts so they can make these lofty profits. What we will do is dedicate some of that city-owned housing for our single homeless. And we will get them a roof over their head and a robust, supportive wraparound service.
Thank you. Councilmember White.
Thank you very much for the question. So there are a few things that we have to do to address and prevent homelessness for single individuals. The first is that we have to diagnose and fix the problems. We know what most of the problems are. When we go out and talk to unhoused residents, we realize that we have fallen short years ago on creating enough affordable housing. We realize that we've fallen short years ago with the appropriate resources for mental health and addiction. And we have fallen short many years ago in supports for people returning from incarceration. That encompasses the vast majority of unhoused single residents in our city. So we have to work upstream. There's an old story that I heard recently where two people found a child laying in a river, and they ran in to pull the child out. They got the child out and realized there was another child there, and they pulled the other child out. They did it again a couple of times, and one of the people started walking away, and the other person said, "Where are you going?" He said, I'm going upstream to figure out why these kids keep falling in the river. So we've got to fix the problems to stop this from happening in the first place. But then we also have to fix the tools. We have to fully fund Project Reconnect, which unfortunately the mayor has not funded. We have to use rapid rehousing appropriately, only for the folks who can get back on their feet in a short amount of time, and not use it as a Band-Aid that drops people off at the end back into a cycle of homelessness and instability. We need to fully fund outreach so that we are reaching the people who are unhoused and connecting them to resources.
Thank you. And Andre Davis?
So part of my plan is accountability, communication, and trust. So when we're looking at the housing crisis and our unhoused and underhoused residents, we know that there are multiple facets that can contribute to their lack of housing or underhousing or unhousing. And when that comes into play, we see a ripple effect. We see mental health services on the decline in the city. We don't see the appropriate core service provider agencies getting the correct amount of funding or hiring the correct staff to man those particular caseloads. So my plan would be very simple. Accountability, communication, and trust. We need to do outreach. We need people to hit the ground. We need feet on the ground to reach our unhoused and underhoused residents so that we can meet them where they are. So many times we try to calculate this formula that puts people into a box, and unfortunately, when we're talking about homelessness, there's no box for it. You know, as Robert said earlier, like it could be any of us. You know, and it's just by the graces of our who we believe in that we are, you know, where we are. And I've experienced this with residents. I've experienced this with the students I've taught. I've experienced this with family members. So just saying that we're going to have great ideas or push these ideas is not enough. We need people on the ground. So some of my first things would be to initiate or build an action group or you know, an outreach program where we have volunteers and paid workers going out and hitting the street and communicating with our unhoused and underhoused residents, giving them the tools or giving them the information that they know where to go. We can sign them up, we can get them shelter, we can get them into rapid rehousing, and we can hold them accountable, we can hold ourselves accountable, but at the same time, it builds that trust that is currently lacking.
Absolutely, thank you. Now, while DC has made significant progress in addressing youth homelessness, additional resources are needed. So as mayor, what are your plans to help ensure that youth have access to supportive services, safe, stable, and affordable housing, as well as the workforce connections needed to exit homelessness while moving towards self-sufficiency and economic mobility? We'll begin with Robert White.
Thank you very much. Youth homelessness is a place where we have not put enough work. Advocates this year asked for $1 million to address youth homelessness and help connect our young people to work opportunities. The first thing we have to do is catch our young people before they fall through the cracks. We had a school, Washington Met, which was, you know, a school of sort of the last opportunity for so many of our young people who are already in unstable households. And when the city closed that school, which was incredibly unfortunate, we lost a lot of those young people. But we also have to recognize that we can still help these young people even after they've slipped through the cracks, even after they've fallen down, because we've all fallen down. We just need to make sure that the right supports exist to help them back up. That includes creating housing opportunities for young people so that they have a safe, productive, and nurturing environment to help get them back on their feet. that we have the programs in our schools, like the STAY education programs for non-traditional students to make sure they can finish their high school education, that we return, which is something that you're going to see in a huge way in my administration, expanding trade and vocational education in our schools so that these young people see tremendous opportunity on the horizon, but also making sure that there's a personal touch of mentors and caring people that wrap around them who support them along the way. Without these tools, unfortunately, we're going to continue to lose too many young people in our city as we have.
Thank you, Council Member. And Andre Davis?
So my experience as an educator in the classroom in a decade, you know, I've taught all over the city, and some of our students that face these housing issues are sponges. They're brilliant. They're the future of this world. And the only thing that alters their trajectory is sometimes environmental factors or housing factors that they cannot control. And for me, I noticed that when I integrated a lot of performance arts, audio engineering, recording processes, just learning the science and basics of audio engineering into some of my after school programs that I led, a lot of students gravitated towards me. And one thing that it led me to believe is that representation matters. And oftentimes our youth will only follow those who represent them, those who look like them, those who act as them, those who think as them, those who can connect with them. And oftentimes our elected officials cannot connect with our youth, which is why we have such a divergence in regards to the youth and our policies. So for me to grab some of those young people and make sure that they have access to affordable housing, it starts with education. It starts with building our schools into community hubs, putting those wraparound services into the schools, bringing and reintroducing the vocational schools. You know, we have Spingarn High School sitting right there unoccupied. We have it. It's a vocational school. We know what we want, you know, what it used to look like. We know what it can possibly do, but we don't act on it. So oftentimes when you have a combination of adults trying to diagnose the problems in regards to the youth, and in this case, you know, their housing stability, it becomes a disconnect because there's no real kind of connection between the two. And a lot of these things are overlooked in regards to what the students actually look, because they don't believe that we represent their best interest.
And Mr. Butler?
Thank you, Dana. I have visited every shelter in the entire city. I don't think there's a single shelter I haven't visited. And at each of these shelters, and invariably, you will see a multitude of young people there. And I've talked with them. I know this factually, that if they have a chance, that someone gives them a fighting chance to get that education, or you find out, or you inquire as to why they dropped out of school or what have you, it really does go back to stability. And there's a couple ways we know we need to address this. Provide them an opportunity to get that education. And the root of this might be, you know, certainly another conversation that we have later on in this, but we certainly need to address the root of this. But one, vocational programs in our schools, making sure that there's a robust wraparound service, because oftentimes it's the same issues that plague adults. Mental behavioral health issues, addiction services, those sorts of things. And we also need to revisit how we look at affordable housing and housing as a whole in this city. Right now, we rely heavily on private developers for the majority of our affordable housing. And people that qualify for affordable housing, we use a formula, an antiquated formula called AMI. In this area, it takes into account a regional calculation of Virginia and Maryland. The reason why that's bad for this area is because those are some of the 4 richest counties in America. It artificially inflates what's affordable in DC. We need to stop relying so heavily on private developers for our housing. We need to go into our city stock of housing. And also by going into our city stock of housing, we can provide permanent housing for some of our homeless and invariably our homeless youth.
Thank you. Encampments were mentioned earlier. Homeless encampments are the most visible manifestation of the homelessness crisis here in the district. Displacing and evicting encampments, as you all know, can cause trauma, as well as damage trust between the government and our unhoused neighbors. As mayor, what would be your approach towards homeless encampments? And we'll begin with Andre Davis.
So I've had unhoused family members who have lived in tent encampments. And I've seen these tent encampments. I've been in these encampments before. I've walked through them, and it's amazing the people that you find there, how gracious they are, how kind they are, how down to earth they are, how willing they are to talk to you. Of course, you have other folks that are there that may not be as willing to speak to you, but I know for a fact that it's very possible to put our feet to the ground and physically go to these places and talk to these people and talk to people. And that's something that is missing from this current administration and previous administrations. No one's talking to the people that are actually being affected by the policies, initiatives, and legislation that is being passed in the city. So for me, to deal with the encampments is a very simple process. It's probably simpler. I'm making it more simple than what it is, but getting our feet on the ground and speaking with a lot of these people in those positions can get a lot of those people out of those encampments, so that we can really do a full assessment in regards to, okay, we have 100 people in this particular tent encampment. 60 of them spoke with us and said they need a place to go now, and they're willing to do A, B, and C. The other 40 people that we spoke to, let's really assess what's going on. Some of them may suffer from substance abuse, mental health issues. They may have other traumas that are not being addressed that we won't be able to assess by a one-size-fits-all mantra. We won't be able to assess who needs what if we're just plowing through the encampment and taking names as we go through. And that's the wrong way to act about that. Creating that physical human touch is what we need. So I would put feet to the pavement and actually physically go to those encampments.
Thank you. James Butler.
Thank you, Dana. Let me be clear and not equivocate whatsoever. As mayor of this great city, I will not go to encampments, scoop them up with bulldozer, and destroy people's lives like that. And think about it. Now and I'm trying to talk in a very practical way. If you're suffering from bipolarism or schizophrenia or whatever, and your life's possessions are scooped up, how much does that exacerbate the problem that you're already going through? So, I mean, we have to run, a good leader will run this city with his mind as well as his heart. And that's the kind of leader I will be. So what we will do, we understand these encampments can't be out there forever. And we're going to try to do something to get them permanent housing. What that looks like under a Butler administration is a task force tasked with counting literally every head and knowing who's out there, but yet a wraparound service to follow with the task force to know what the needs of those individuals are so that we can get them permanent housing, the help that they need, if it's economic help so they can get on their feet, if it's mental or behavioral health, it's issues or addiction issues. We're going to ensure that every head is accounted for and every head has permanent supportive housing. Not just something that lasts a month or 2 months. Some people needed a year, 2 years, 3 years, but we got to stay with them. A good friend of mine, a law school buddy of mine, says, James, you're going to take care of the homeless whether you want to or not. Because if you don't take care of them one way, you're going to take care of them on the back end when they're in the hospitals or in the jails or whatever. This is a problem that's solvable, a human-created crisis that we need to solve. We've got the economic resources to do it in our city. And I promise you, as mayor, and you can record it, I know we're recording this, but take note of this. We will end chronic homelessness in the District of Columbia.
Thank you. And Robert White?
Thank you. Just as I did as a council member, showing up to encampments, not just when they're, cameras and reporters, but showing up in earnest to talk to people, to understand what they're going through, and therefore to have a better understanding of how we solve the problem. That's the mayor I'm going to be. Imagine a mayor that sees themselves as part of the community, including the community who have the least. As mayor, you will see a difference. I will focus on housing people, not clearing encampments. And here's the difference. When you're clearing encampments, you show up with bulldozers and you may accidentally bulldoze a person. When you're clearing encampments, you show up with the police and dump trucks in a way that is going to further traumatize people that we have already failed, versus housing people, which is when you know that it takes time to build trust, because this is not the first time some government officials has come and said, we're going to help you. And many times we have fallen short on that promise. So we have to give the time to build trust. We should never, ever, ever put a hard date. We should never, ever, ever say, you got to get out of here and we're going to fence it off. Before I was elected to the council, I read a Washington Post article about a young woman I went to school with, high school with, named Skylar Rue. She was a basketball phenom, one of the best in the world. Unfortunately, I've wondered for years, whatever happened to her? She was such a magnificent talent. The Washington Post article many years ago said she was living on the streets of DC and she was schizophrenic. And so I saw the name Jubilee Housing in the article. I called Jubilee Housing and I said, why aren't you helping my friend? And they said, look, Robert, we can't talk to you about any particular person, but we can tell you that people who suffer from mental health challenges often won't receive help the first time or even the second time. And so it takes a long time to build trust, but once you build trust, they'll take those resources. None of us want to see people living out in the street, and almost nobody wants to live on the street themselves. The challenge for us is to take the compassionate approach and make sure that we have the funding to back it up.
Thank you. And each of you this evening has spoken to the simple fact that housing is what ends homelessness. And yet housing is too expensive for many residents here in the district, especially those living with little or even no income, and including those families who are soon to be exited from DC's rapid rehousing program. So as mayor, how will you ensure that DC targets housing resources to those most in need? And we will begin with James Butler.
Yeah, as I stated earlier, Dana, first of all, the city relies too heavily on private developers for its housing stock. We have an option of going with private developers and also using our own housing stock of buildings that we own. As mayor, what I will do, I will ensure that DC changes the way it relies on HUD's formula for calculating AMI. Again, we're using this regional formula that artificially inflates what's affordable in DC. Nothing in the law right now compels us to use HUD's formula. We will abort it, we will adopt our own localized formula, and we will make housing more affordable in DC. On the next end of it, what we will also do is ensure that we rely more heavily on the city's housing stock to create our own affordable housing as well. What that will do is, one, allow us to create more affordable housing and not rely on these developers, but it will also allow us to put permanent supportive housing for all of the homeless individuals that we're talking about right now, those unhoused. The third part of my plan is to do this. Right now, we have rent control, and it's most people don't know we have it, and it's not what they see like in New York. Why is that? Because right now, rent control is not applicable to any dwelling places that were built post 1975. So nothing built in the last 42 years is covered by rent control. We will change the law. We're not beholden to anyone. I am not beholden to anyone. I haven't kissed anyone's rings, and I absolutely will put hard dates on what I'm doing. Absolutely. Let me be clear and not equivocate once again. I will put hard dates on it, and we will change the law.
Thank you. Andre Davis.
The housing crisis here in the district is one that is not foreign to other urban cities in the United States. We've seen it in San Francisco, we've seen it in New York, we've seen it in other burgeoning cities such as Houston, Dallas, Fort Worth, Miami. We've seen it. The only difference between those cities and our cities are sometimes the the background in regards to the type of industries that come out of out of those cities call for higher pay. You know, when you're talking about San Francisco, you're talking about, you know, Silicon Valley, you're talking about tech. Here in the district, we have that same industry, or, you know, influential and affluential industries where people are compensated well. The problem is that's not the entire city. That is not, it's not the majority of the city. We have a very transient city being the nation's capital, and we treat it as such. And in regards to establishing housing, we need to make sure that we are building units for people to have pathway programs. The number one thing that I've seen from just growing up on Capitol Hill and seeing so many people of color lose their homes, and it was not because they couldn't afford it. It was the lack of financial literacy. It was the lack of financial knowledge behind their property and their values. So for me, we need to make sure that if we want to increase housing, we also have to increase the ways that people access housing, the pathway programs. We need to increase the financial literacy programs. We need to increase the ways that people are borrowing from the banks, because at this rate, if we continue on what we're doing, we're looking at 500 square feet being $1,500 a month. And as you go up, people can't afford that. Even with the minimum wage bump, we have so many places where there's a retail space on the bottom, and the people who work in the retail space at the bottom cannot afford a 1-bedroom unit atop of the place that they work.
And Robert White.
Thank you. I mentioned earlier that I'm a fifth generation Washingtonian. What I didn't mention is that I'm one of the only members of my family that is still able to live in the district. Over the past 20 years, I've seen almost every single member of my family priced out of this city that they love, including my dad, my brother, my cousins, my aunts, my uncles, everybody in my family except for my aunt, who lives in the house that my grandparents bought in 1963. So addressing the issue of affordable housing is a key priority for me. It is a personal mission. The first thing I'm going to do is use the bully pulpit of the mayor to set the clear standard for the city. We are going to develop housing for working people and people with low incomes, housing that is multi-bedroom, because we must create more housing for people who are not wealthy in the city. That is something that a mayor can do. That is a standard that a mayor can set, but you have to be bold. You have to jump out there and set that expectation. The second thing we're going to do is prevent homelessness. That means we're going to reform rapid rehousing to use a targeted approach instead of a Band-Aid that we use it for now. We are going to expand our rent subsidy program, because there are a lot of working people and families in this city who are working, who are able to pay a substantial amount of rent, but can't quite reach that mark every month, and they need not become homeless. We can prevent it. It is in our best interest. It is in their best interest. I'm going to make sure that we follow the law on the Housing Production Trust Fund. It is nice that we keep putting more and more money into the trust fund every year, but we're still not meeting the law that requires us to build half of this at deeply affordable housing, and we have to meet that mark. And finally, I'm going to make sure we are getting people employed. As our economy has expanded, unemployment in the Black community has continued to be double what it is for the rest of the city. That is unacceptable. And that is another way that we prevent homelessness and displacement.
Thank you. To end homelessness, we know that we have to provide those currently experiencing homelessness with housing. At the same time, we have to divert or prevent people from entering into homelessness in the first place. And so as mayor, how will you ensure that nobody else is entering the situation of homelessness, including those who are currently in short-term programs, but who may be exited without stable housing? We'll begin with Robert White.
Thank you. The first thing that we are going to do is expand eviction prevention. DC closed the Stay DC program just as we were ending the moratorium. We should have tapped into our federal emergency funds because this was an emergency. This is something that we have to do, should have done to prevent homelessness. As I mentioned earlier, we are using rapid rehousing right now as a broad sort of homelessness prevention program, but it doesn't work like that. It's a cool joke. We're putting people into housing for a limited amount of time and saying, you're going to have to carry these market rents at the end. Well, they're still not making more money. So how are they going to do that? We're dropping them right back into this very unfortunate cycle. As I mentioned earlier, we are going to follow the law with respect to the Housing Production Trust Fund. Right now, this is being used as a fund to fund development projects for the mayor's friends and donors, but it has to be a program that we're using to fund deeply affordable housing here in our city. This is not a one-size-fits-all issue. This is an issue where if we take a little bit of prevention and caution and precaution and target the needs to the people, we can prevent homelessness. So we have got to get serious. We've got to stop taking these broad one-size-fits-all approaches, and we've got to target our programs the way that they were meant to.
Thank you. And now Andre Davis.
So for me, we need to make sure that we have outreach programs. And one of the things that we would do in the outreach is we have the funds to acquire properties within the city. I know that there's a ton of people they spoke with me and they were like, well, what about, the old Boardman Hotel or the McMillan Reservoir and these places that you see that we actually own, but or we could acquire, but we don't have the will to acquire. That comes down to community engagement and civic engagement. We need to keep our residents informed about what is going on in the city. So many people in the city have no idea about the homelessness crisis outside of, just hearing about the encampment. They don't understand that it takes wraparound services. They don't understand the true needs and actually who it affects. So we need outreach to make sure that communities are not pushing away or being, malicious in any way, shape, or form to, our ideas of, hey, we're going to purchase this property here and develop it into affordable housing for, those who may be able to receive vouchers or housing accommodations. We need to make sure that we're speaking with residents so that residents are informed, because that trust not only goes for our unhoused and underhoused residents, it also goes for the communities that will welcome them, the communities that will bring them into the fold and say, you know what, you're here and where you started is not where you're going to end up. You're going to become a part of this community. So having those outreach programs and making sure that we're preventing evictions and making sure that the Housing Production Trust Fund is actually sticking to what it's actually supposed to be designed for is the best way to tackle this crisis. And I don't see anyone in their right mind who would say, you know what, I don't want to do a good deed or build a development here because of this in my neighborhood if we've done the outreach. And I think that's where we need to go.
Thank you. And lastly, James Butler.
And Dana, my apologies. I got a bad connection when you first asked the question. I started to raise my hand, but I wanted to let you. So if you can restate the question, I'd be grateful.
Absolutely.
Thank you.
I prefaced with, we know that to end homelessness, we have to provide housing to those who are currently experiencing homelessness, but at the same time, divert or prevent people from entering into homelessness in the first place. So as mayor, how will you ensure that nobody else enters homelessness, including those who are currently in short-term programs, but who may be exited without stable housing?
Great, thank you. And I wanted to say, extending programs like Stay DC. And I do want to say this because this is only fair. Robert White represents me on the council. I'm a resident of the district. And I think that would have been a good opportunity for him to propose emergency legislation to push for Stay DC to be funded by the city after the federal funds run out. So I do want to point that out, because even though while this discussion in this forum is not to go at each other, I just think it's only fair that if we can help demographics out there, because at the last forum, there were a group of folks that showed up that were complaining about this that are facing the possibility of becoming homeless. So yes, we do need to extend the funds and stay DC. And yes, I do encourage those on DC Council, including the member here today, to propose emergency legislation. You can't be here and assume you don't have any power because you have it. In addition to stay DC, we need to do further outreach to ensure that rapid rehousing, if someone is at risk on rapid rehousing, that we extend those funds to ensure that they have a place to stay. And every other mechanism, explore every other possible mechanism possible to ensure that not a single person is left unhoused.
Thank you, Mr. Butler. I want to thank each of you for your thorough and passionate responses thus far. And before we proceed with additional questioning, we will have another video testimonial. Tonight's second video features Wesley Thomas. Wesley is also a Miriam's Kitchen advocate and former guest who experienced homelessness for 29 years, And since being housed, Wesley has helped 15 other people obtain housing also.
Hello, I'm Wesley Thomas, a member of Miriam's Kitchen Speakers Group and Advocacy Team. I was homeless chronically on the streets for 29 years. I would like to see the next mayor of Washington, D.C. find room for the homeless people in the housing industry instead of uprooting them from where they live and making it more difficult for them to live. And by doing that, they find a more structured living and they'll be in a safe environment.
And so for our next round of questioning, the responses will be very brief from each of the candidates. You will either provide a thumbs up or a thumbs down to state your position. And after each response, I will recap how each of you have responded. One moment. Together, Mayor Bowser and the DC Council have devoted significant funding to housing that ends chronic homelessness over the past several fiscal years. As mayor, will you commit to continuing to fund and expand PSH, or permanent supportive housing, and other housing interventions as needed to meet the needs of people experiencing chronic homelessness? And I have thumbs up commitments from each of the candidates, White, Davis, and Butler. The Way Home campaign brings together over 100 organizations and 7,000 individual supporters committed to ending homelessness in the district. As mayor, will you commit to meeting with the Way Home campaign yearly as you create your budget? We have confirmations or yeses from White, Davis, and Butler. Thank you. DC's recent approach to homeless encampments has included not only the eviction of encampments, but also the creation of no tent zones. As mayor, will you commit to not creating no tent zones?
Not creating no tent zones, correct?
Yes. Okay, we have 3 yeses, 3 thumbs up for that. Housing First is a national best practice that puts people into housing first without any preconditions or barriers. Do you support the Housing First approach? All 3 candidates have said yes. Do you support universal affordable housing for all DC long-term residents stricken with high rents and displacement?
I have to say that I'm a little bit unclear. When you say all residents, does all mean any income, Dana?
It does. Low income, to clarify, low income.
Okay, thank you for the clarification.
Changes things, no problem. And so I have thumbs up from all three candidates. Thank you. Will you ensure that at least half of Housing Production Trust Fund is used for those living at 0 to 30% AMI? All candidates have said yes. Thank you. As mayor, will you commit to generating revenue through taxing our wealthiest residents and businesses to ensure that DC has the resources needed to end homelessness? We have yeses and confirmations from all three candidates. Thank you. Domestic violence is a leading cause of homelessness. Will you ensure that survivors of domestic violence have safe and stable housing? A yes from each candidate. We know that many families are set to be terminated from DC's rapid rehousing program. As mayor, will you ensure that families and individuals in rapid rehousing are not exited into homelessness? Three yeses. Do you support using the former Wardman Hotel site in Ward 3 to greatly expand housing for our lowest income neighbors? Another three yeses. And are you committed to preserving public housing for those with 0 to 30% AMI?
Can you repeat the question? You kind of went out there, Dana.
My apologies. Are you committed to preserving public housing for those with 0 to 30% MFI?
You're using MFI interchangeably with AMI, I presume?
I am, thank you.
Okay, great.
Thank you for bearing with us in the technical difficulties. And so those responses were, okay, yes from Butler, yes from Davis, and yes from White. Thank you. And so we have a third and final video, which features Sheila White, a former Miriam's Kitchen Advocacy Fellow. Sheila is also graduating from the University of the District of Columbia this summer. So we want to extend a deep congratulations to her on behalf of the entire Miriam's Kitchen family, and I'm sure everyone who is in attendance tonight as well.
My name is Sheila White. I was formerly homeless for 8 years. What I would like the mayor to do is to end homelessness for everyone. We need housing, affordable housing for everyone. I would like for you to improve our shelters. I've lived in the shelter and the conditions of there are terrible. We need more advocates and people who care about shelters and care about the people that are in the shelters. And if you could, spend more time and visit the shelters so you can see for yourself what's going on in these shelters. Because they could be better where they are. The food is terrible there. I mean, eating rice every day, and if you're a diabetic, the food is not good for a diabetic person like me. And I just would like the mayor to actually improve our shelters for the women and men and family shelters, because we need the improvement to be done, and as soon as possible.
Thank you to Sheila White and all of the advocates representing Miriam's Kitchen tonight who have shared testimonials. We now will have closing remarks from each candidate, which will be limited to 2 minutes per candidate. And we will go in the following order. It will be Davis, Butler, and then Councilmember White.
Okay. So I just want to thank everyone for coming out and hearing our platforms. It takes a lot to get on this stage and to speak on various topics, especially when those topics affect you in your day-to-day life. If anything, I want people to remember that I'm an advocate for the people. You know, my education experience, being in the classroom and being a product of Washington, D.C., being a fourth generation native Washingtonian, still being able to walk. I walk the city a lot, and I see a lot of our residents. I talk with a lot of residents. As I said, I'm a Ward 6 resident, so I'm often down at Eastern Market for Market Day. I take my 94-year-old great aunt, you know, onto the avenue all the time. So I'm always there, and I see a lot of our residents who are out there, and they talk to me. And during this campaign process, a lot of them, you know, were excited to have someone like me walking around, being able to speak to me. I've had many of the women in general, women and gentlemen around that area, you know, just give me their praise and give me their, you know, their support, because they often feel unheard, and they often feel like they don't trust or cannot trust their elected officials because they do not have their best interest in mind. And I'm not a person who makes promises. That's one thing I can't do. But I'm a person of my word. So when I speak to people, when I give them my word, I'm always willing to stick by my word. And I usually do. I very seldom fall short on my word. So if anything, I want people to remember that, you know, a true person or a true advocate in this fight, it just doesn't stop here. You know, it doesn't stop here. There's more than one way to tackle this crisis. And regardless of which side I'm on, I'll be tackling this crisis.
Thank you. James Butler.
To run for mayor of this great city from my soul, from my heart, is the greatest honor of my life. To represent the underserved in this city is the greatest honor of my life. I will distill into simple terms, kind of a recap of what I said. I believe I'm the only candidate that will aspire to eliminate this purgatory we call shelters and transition housing. They are abusive, as was stated by the lady in the last video. Rapes occur, all kinds of things. People lose property, the fights. They're not a dignified way to treat human beings. I will work as mayor to eliminate these transition housing and shelters, and to provide permanent supportive housing for all residents of the district. That means us doing the hard political stuff, like going into our housing stock, holding affordable private developers more accountable for providing more affordable housing. And if we look at some of our district leaders who have cozied up with developers, well, of course you're not holding them accountable because you've cozied up with them. We need people that are free, independent in their thinking, and completely free and independent in their political will. Because after all, when we're elected to the office of mayor, we are a servant of the people, and that's how we must comport ourselves in office. We will work to change the law as it relates to AMI and MFI. We will work to bring rent control. These two things will ensure that less people experience homelessness and being unhoused. And I have said it before, and I'll say it again. I have worked my entire adult life for matters of civil rights. I am a foot soldier for justice and for what is right. And I will be no different as mayor of this great city. I appreciate the opportunity to be here tonight, Dana, for you moderating. Jesse, I appreciate everything that you do to further the ends of fairness when it comes to housing. Thank you so much.
Thank you, James Butler. And lastly, Councilmember Robert White.
I want to thank you all again. Thank Miriam's Kitchen, everyone for hosting, and everyone who has joined in. I am humbled to be running for the mayor of my hometown city, a city that I love and believe in a great deal. This is the wealthiest that our city has ever been. Every year we have record-setting budgets, but we have not solved any problems. It is one thing to have and spend a lot of money. It is another thing to solve problems. To go from where I came from to where I am now, I have had to be a problem solver. I've had to create paths where paths didn't exist. And that is what I have done as a legislator. I've solved problems. I've created housing vouchers for returning citizens, housing vouchers for LGBTQ youth, for seniors, including LGBTQ seniors. I worked with my colleagues on the council to create a modest tax increase last year to create thousands of vouchers to help house our unhoused residents. I am a problem solver, and that is what we need in our mayor. Folks see this around the city. There's something in the air. People are not happy with where we are. They are not happy with the current administration, and they believe that we can do better. Our campaign has incredible momentum because people see the work that we've done. They know that I'm ready to lean in to be a transformational leader in a time that calls for a transformational leader, not a status quo leader. We are going to make a change on June 21st, but we need you with us. We have raised well over $1 million in this campaign from everyday people, despite having a low average donation. We have hundreds of people with us knocking on doors, making calls, 50 people with us knocking on doors just this weekend alone. But to win this race, we need you on board too. We cannot leave this election to chance. We won't get this opportunity back when there is so much will across our city to be bold and transformational, and we have the money to do it. This is our time, and I'm asking you to jump in with us. I'm Robert White, and I'm asking for your vote for mayor of DC.
Thank you so much. I want to take this moment to express my personal deep gratitude to each of the candidates this evening for really thorough, thoughtful responses to the questions and for taking time out of your campaigns to be here with the several hundred people who have registered for this event. I'm going to hand it over to Laura to close us out.
Thank you. I'm Lara Pukac. I'm the Chief Advocacy Officer at Miriam's Kitchen. I just want to thank you all for joining us this evening. Over 300 of you have joined us either here on Zoom or via the many live streams, and I think many more who were trickling in and are following along on social media. So we thank you for your time. Thank you especially to our candidates who joined us this evening, to James Butler, Andre Davis, and to Councilmember Robert White. Thank you so much for being so generous with your time and your thoughtfulness to today's conversation. We had a robust discussion and heard so many commitments from our mayoral candidates. Too many to even recap here, but I think what's worth highlighting is that we did hear from all of the candidates present in our forum this evening to a commitment to preserving and expanding resources for permanent supportive housing, to meeting annually with the Way Home campaign, a local movement to end long-term homelessness in the district, to opposing no tent zones in the city's approach to encampments, to supporting a housing first approach to ending homelessness in DC, to dedicating resources for those living on lowest incomes in the district as part of the Housing Production Trust Fund, to generating revenue to make sure that the city has the resources it needs to invest in housing to end homelessness, and we heard a commitment not to exit individuals or families from rapid rehousing into homelessness. So thank you all for the robust discussion and for the commitments you made this evening. Thank you also to our incredible moderator, Dana White, for helping to support this important conversation and for your own work and leadership to end homelessness for our nation's youth. And for all of those that are tuning in and joining us at home, we hope that you will vote. If you are interested in finding out if you are registered to vote or to find out more about how to vote, you can visit www.dcboe.org to our local board of elections. To learn more about Miriam's Kitchen, the organization that is hosted our event tonight and where Jesse and I work, you can visit us at miriamskitchen.org. To learn more about advocacy opportunities to end homelessness in DC, we hope you'll visit the Way Home campaign, which is currently supported by over 110 organizations and 7,000 individuals. You can learn more at thewayhomedc.org. And I'll just thank you again, all of you, for tuning in, for making sure that this important conversation about ending homelessness is at the top of the list of our mayoral candidates. And we look forward to seeing how this conversation evolves throughout the debates. So thank you so much to everyone for your time, and good night.
Thanks so much, y'all. Have a good night, everyone.
Good night, Jesse.
Bye.
Thank you, Robert, Andre.
Take
Thank
care,
you.
guys. Everyone have a great one.
Good to see you.